You don't have to believe in God to be able to accept that there was a flesh and blood man called Jesus who lived in this part of the world and died here in Jerusalem. I lived in this city for more than 5 years as the BBC's Middle East correspondent. It didn't make me religious, but it made me realize that the actions of a human being 2,000 years ago still cast a giant shadow over us, whether we believe or whether we don't.
To prove Jesus really existed, we have to look not to his birth but to his death, one of the best attested facts in ancient history. A first-century Jewish historian called Josephus was just one of 80 sources that confirm Jesus existed. In his History of the Jewish People, Josephus described Jesus as a wise man who worked surprising deeds and who was popular with many Jews and Greeks. He also wrote that Jesus was convicted by leading members of society and crucified by Pontius Pilate. So Josephus confirms it was Pilate, the Roman governor, who sentenced Jesus to death. And, thanks to archaeology, we know where Pilate lived. I travelled 60 miles northwest from Jerusalem to the ruins of Caesarea. It was the seat of Pilate's power, bristling with soldiers and the Romans' latest military technology. From here, they occupied Judea, now part of Israel and the Palestinian territories. 2,000 years ago, in the time of Jesus, Caesarea was a mighty outpost of the empire. This aqueduct brought fresh water from the north. The restored theatre is now one of Israel's top music venues. There are no obvious remains, though, of the major port built by Herod.
But from the air, you can see the ruins of a lost harbour that's now covered by the sea.
Evidence of the street plan and the remains of buildings has allowed archaeologists to recreate what Caesarea looked like. It was originally built by Herod, the Jewish king, and completed in 10 BC. But the Romans took it over as their headquarters. In the heart of the city was the temple to the Emperor Augustus. From here, Pontius Pilate ruled Judea. Pilate was ruthless. He executed dozens of Jewish rebels. He wouldn't have thought twice about getting rid of a young troublemaker from Galilee. So, the Jewish historian Josephus confirms that Jesus was a real man who lived and died, but that's about it. The best place to find the details of Jesus' life, his mysterious birth and the ideas for which he died, is in the Gospels. When we had to study them at school, I thought they were religious books for religious people. You can't trust them as history, I thought. They were written at least 40 years after he died, based on stories that had been handed down. But now, I know that this was a good way to record history.
Today, if I was writing a history of the Second World War, I'd talk to people who remembered it. The war ended half a century ago, but you can still interview survivors. Memories get fragile, but historians can cross-check the different accounts to find out what's true and what's exaggerated. We now know that the Gospel writers, also relying on the spoken word, got the essentials of Jesus' life story right.
Today, it's historians, archaeologists and scientists who are gradually filling in the details. Their breakthroughs are making it easier to establish what actually happened in Jesus' world. The biggest advance was in 1947. They found ancient Jewish scrolls in caves overlooking the Dead Sea. Jim Charlesworth from Princeton University has spent his life deciphering them. They show the Middle East was as blood-stained and divided then as it is today.
It is a vibrant world in which so many arguments are going on. There are some people living here that believe that they were really in a war, and that's where Jesus fits in. It's a life that makes sense because we're understanding the context.
And this is where it all began. Bethlehem, a town 5 miles south of Jerusalem. It's close to the heart of the conflict between Palestinians and Jews. I filed dozens of news reports from here, but not one of my stories matched what started in Bethlehem 2,000 years ago. The famous Christmas story comes from Luke's Gospel. He says Joseph and Mary arrived in Bethlehem exhausted by their long journey from Nazareth, but there was no room at the inn. In Matthew's Gospel, though, the story isn't even mentioned. Maybe there was no journey. Maybe they were already living in Bethlehem. Well, we know from church records that by the 2nd century, when Christianity was going strong, it was widely believed that Jesus was born in Bethlehem. This place, the Church of the Nativity, was built over the spot to mark it forever. But never mind what they believed back then. Where's the evidence? Well, the best is in the church itself, but it's not what we might expect. Excavations haven't found stables or an inn, but a 1st century network of caves or grottos directly under the church. Right under the main altar, there's a grotto the pilgrims head for first.
This is the grotto under the Church of the Nativity. The tradition is that Jesus was born here, at the place marked by the star, and if you reach inside, you can feel what's supposed to be the exact spot.
So, where's the wooden stable? Like thousands of people who come here every year, I felt a bit cheated it didn't look like the one on the Christmas cards. Could Jesus have really been born in a cave? I didn't have to travel far to find strong evidence that he probably was. This is Yatta, a Palestinian town. Although it's only 30 miles south of Bethlehem, it's way off the tourist trail. In the center is an old, abandoned village. 1st century villages looked very like this. What do we know about Bethlehem? Originally, it was built on a hill so villagers could see their enemies coming. Rooftops were used as living space during the hot weather. Records show that about 1,000 people would have lived in a place like this. And there were caves under the houses, like the caves under the church in Bethlehem, that they used as stables.